What's up you guys, it's 2bricks, and today I'm going to be showing you the next in the line of my ultimate playset scale series of models that primarily focuses on Star Wars ships. This is the T-70 X-Wing, made famous by Black Leader, for whom this color scheme is created. This is obviously the main X-Wing that Poe Dameron flies in the first two films of the sequel trilogy. And it's kind of a continuation of the design philosophies that I initiated with my T-65 X-Wing, the full video tour of which you can check out on my channel. Just search for Red 5 or Luke Skywalker X-Wing and you should be able to find it pretty easily. And in that one I go in depth into the kind of design principles and things that I employed to create what I consider to be the sturdiest and most playable X-Wing, combined with the most accurate features that I think is out there. And that's something that I was really striving for you guys, to be able to have a set that is really durable and playable and won't fall apart on you when you're handling it, but also looks the part. So this is going to be the follow-up to that. Like I said, the T-70 and the T-65, they are similar in nature, so a lot of the same things that I said in that video will apply here. So I'll try to spare you guys a lot of the repetition and just kind of go through what's new with this version. I'll do a little comparison as well between the two, so you can see directly some of the differences in proportions and such. But yeah, this one's going to be just taking a look at the features that are unique to this ship and calling out some of the cool design bits of it. And so if you guys are interested, let's go ahead and take a look. So the first thing to note is that the X-Wing is here sitting on a stand. That stand is a slightly modified version of the one for the T-65. The base is exactly the same, just the part that plugs in underneath here is a little bit different in its design. That is just to accommodate the slightly different technique that I used to build the undercarriage here, and obviously create the stand to be able to work with that one a little bit more easily. But this is a separate free downloadable that you can get, which will be listed alongside the T-70, and it'll be labeled T-70 X-Wing stand, and you guys can just get that for no additional cost. I didn't want to include it in the main parts list here because I wanted to make it so that if you guys just wanted to have the ship, you could order the parts for that and get those without having to kind of go through and remove the parts for the stand. So that's the reason for that. So yeah, let's take a look at the actual ship. All right, so here we have the T-70. It's a little bit shorter than its counterpart, the T-65. It has a slightly stubbier nose and a little bit of a sharper point to the front there. It looks a little sleeker in my opinion, especially with those singular rounded engines that come together and obviously split apart, and those wings which accurately split in half the way that they do in the movie. And you can see there the top and bottom half just separate out to give you the two different wings, and then come together and sit completely flat to form a singular wing there, which was not an easy thing to figure out as to how I was going to execute that, especially because I wanted to keep the top and bottom the same orientation as far as having the studs facing the same direction in both, so it kind of helps with that illusion. And so figuring that out was a little bit tricky, but I'm glad that I got there in the end. And then as far as the design differences, the overall fluidity, you can see here the sleekness of the way that these engines kind of mold into the cowling here for the main engine, and the kind of rounded off nature of it. The back here is a little stubbier and has a kind of nice slope to it that everything just comes together at a slightly smaller point here, and it'll be a little easier to see the differences when I compare it to the T-65. But yeah, just overall sleekness. The angle of the cockpit piece here is a little bit different. To facilitate the kind of nice smooth continuation of this angle, I wanted to have this slightly sitting lower than the T-65 one, so it does cut in diagonally ever so slightly into the frame here. So in order to get that cockpit to sit a little bit lower down, now I just have it where these panels sit underneath this cockpit piece here, and previously on the T-65 those were a little bit kind of protruding on the outside of that. And so redesigning it this way just gives me the clearance to be able to drop that down just a little bit lower, and then hence continuing that nice line that you see down there through the front of the nose. So I was really happy with how that turned out. So the features that we have here, we have a opening cockpit naturally. We have the same splitting open design here with the side panels that open up to give you easy access to your figure, who currently is obviously Black Leader Poe Dameron. They're looking very spiffy. And I have a kind of inversion of the color scheme with a light gray color in here for the seat, whereas in the T-65 it is a black seat with a white color scheme. There's a slightly redesigned front cockpit kind of control panel here with, it still has the two little control panels to the side and the gear stick in the middle, and then that little display up in the front. The only difference is that this is kind of dropped down a little bit lower just to create some extra room up here at the top for these newly redesigned panels to hug in just a little bit closer to the frame to give it clearance for that single canopy piece there. Also, we have BB-8 here instead of an R2 unit, but I wanted to be able to accommodate both. So what I've done, in order to have BB-8 in here, there's a little kind of, I don't know what you call it, like a little sling that BB-8 sits in, which is a removable piece. It's a sub-assembly that's just studded in here just a little bit, and that just allows you to put your BB-8 unit in there, and then these two panels come to the side here and hug that shape really nicely. But if you don't want that, you can leave that out, and an R2 unit will fit in there just the same way as it did on the T-65. And here's how that looks with an R2 unit in it. I think it has a pretty respectable look to it, and the actual design calls out in the kind of, you know, behind the scenes, I guess the visual dictionary, maybe hear this, calls out the fact that this has a kind of alternating droid socket, I think they call it, or a customizable droid socket where the opening will actually change shape depending on which astromech droid is going to be flying, and it can do that kind of like automatically on the fly, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, my solution is a little bit more clunky, obviously, because it's physical Lego bricks, but I think the ability to have both in there is nice. So the next thing that we have is retractable landing gear, exactly the same as before. Those are just buried in there into the engines, nicely kind of tucked away like you would expect. So those just kick out the back, and then there's one here in the front, which comes down. This does get a little bit tucked away in here sometimes, so you have to fight with it. Oop, there we go. There's actually a stud under here that you can grab onto if you need to, and then that also acts as a stopper up at the front. So once those are out, you can place the X-Wing down and it'll stand no problem at all. I did initially have a problem where the back legs wanted to kick forward a little bit too easily when I was moving this around, but I just redesigned a slight bit of how those are, the angle just kind of took care of that, no problem. Previously they were just sitting kind of at this angle, and then I brought it back a little further like that, so now it has more stability with that triangular shape. So that's really cool. So yeah, the landing gear just tucks away like that. And on the bottom of this ship, there is actually these two little kind of flaps that stick out, or these little protrusions. I don't know exactly what they're supposed to be, but I like to leave the landing gear just untucked just ever so slightly to kind of represent those. I think that's cool. And then obviously the wings on the X-Wing can do the X action exactly the same as before. There's a button underneath here, a large 2x4 that you push on with your finger, and then you just push that a little extra to get it to stay in place. And people have noted to me that with the T-65, and I'm also finding with this design, they're having a little bit of trouble keeping those wings in that up position. And what it really, I found, depends on is the kind of way that specifically the parts are put together when you do this, and the parts that you have. There's a little bit of friction, maybe some give and take of certain parts, parts that might be older, or very slight variances in the design, where the wings either want to stay open or they don't. And that's something that I'm working on, kind of coming up with a fix for that. But when you're playing with it, you can have your finger under there. It's where it naturally wants to sit, and you're swishing it around, and you just keep that open, and then you just push on the top button. No problem to get those back in. But that is something that I'm aware of. Thank you guys for bringing that to my attention, and I'm going to be working on a fix in future for that. But it does stay open if you just kind of apply pressure and keep it in there, kind of try to engage those studs that are in there in the center, and it usually stays open with no problem with just a little bit of fiddling. So hopefully that's not giving you guys too much of a headache, and it is something that I'm aware of and I'm attempting to fix. And the next feature that I wanted to call out is on the underside here. In The Force Awakens, you may remember, at the beginning of the movie, Poe Dameron was flying not this exact model, but he had a standard Black Squadron gray and blue X-Wing, and he deploys these kind of automated sentry turrets that come out and defend the ship from the stormtroopers on the ground while he's attempting to get in the air. So I represented that in here with a couple of these blaster pistols that are on little levered arms that come down, and you can position those, and they can be firing at whomever. And I think canonically, I think those can actually deploy when the ship is in flight as well, so you can kind of mount a rear defense, albeit a pretty lackluster one against other starfighters, but it's still something that you can kind of have as an extra feature. So I think that's really cool, and of course, you know, I wanted to include that if I could. And then those just tuck away. So it's really hard to film black Lego, but those just, you know, rotate and then tuck away and just sit flat against the wing here, and they have this kind of little slot where they nicely fit into, and you really don't see them at all when the ship is when they're not deployed. So I think that works out pretty well. And also just, you know, the blackness of it helps to hide that, and also the fact that kind of just could represent like a greebly piping detail or something under here if you weren't looking at it. So I think that works out really nicely. And then we have some more greeblies back here, slightly different configuration than the T-65. And then these little additional pipe details that go into the engines, which I really liked on the main model. I liked that they were a lighter color so you could really see those little details. So I think that's cool. We still have our pink glow coming out of the back of the engines here, just like on the T-65. And then these represent the markings of the black leader. There's I believe it's 2 orange stripes and then 3 gray ones. There wasn't really a good way to represent that and still maintain this kind of angle through here, so I just used these plates, these wedge plates here to kind of fill in that area, and you can just imagine the stripes for yourself. Sometimes you could just wiggle, see if there's a little bit of a gap here. The way that these wings are attached, the fact that there has to be multiple sections to get it to achieve the look of the splitting apart just means that they do get out of alignment a little bit sometimes, but if you just kind of wiggle it back into place, that's usually fine. And the gap is usually pretty minimal anyway. So yeah, there's that. There's these new designs here for the wingtip cannons where they're only attached with 2 studs here and 2 studs on the top here. So I had to rethink how those would be attached, and the way that the design is with these kind of swooping down and then swooping up conversely on this side actually worked really well with the design of Lego's curved slope pieces, and enabled me to kind of figure out a solution for that that actually worked out really well and kind of looked pretty respectable, I think, to the actual design. And it's still really sturdy, so these still aren't gonna go anywhere. These two, this whole thing is the same kind of thought process here with the stud and bar connections going all the way through, where there's nothing that's like hollow or gonna pop off on you. So these are all nice and secure. These engine assemblies up here are also nice and secure. They're only held on with 2 studs, these little additional engine intakes here, but the way that they're configured, they don't ever pop off or anything, so those are really nice. The ship can still stand on its engines as before, so that's really cool. And then yeah, overall, there's still no weak areas. You can grab it by the front, you can grab it by the wings, you just pick it up and handle it really pretty roughly, and you really don't have any issues. The only thing that you might encounter if you were to say, and I don't recommend this, I don't know why you ever would, but if you just picked it up by a single wing, you may pull out one of these wing pieces, because these are only held in here with Technic pins, and yeah, you just may inadvertently pop one of those off. Again, don't know why you would want to do that. I don't think anyone's playing with their X-Wing like that, but that's just something to keep in mind. And once again, like with the T-65, it can sit flat on the deck without the landing gear engaged, and it'll just sit there nicely, so you can just easily pick it up, play with it, put it down, and you're good to go. Okay, and the last feature that this actually has is this additional booster rocket, which you can see here from The Last Jedi, from the opening scene where Poe goes on a suicidal mission against the Dreadnought by himself. And this has a removable flame element, so you can add that in if you choose to or not, or you can have the more pure, just kind of like rocket booster look. Depends how you want to depict that. And then that just clips in there really easily. And then this piece fits onto the back here with a single stud, just into this central section where you would kind of expect it to go. And you can sort of line up all these little hose pipe details. This actually did have all of these different tubes that kind of feed into the main ship there. And so I just kind of get those lined up nicely to where it looks about right. And then there you go, that's Poe Dameron's booster engaged, and he did only get one good kick with it in the movie, and then 5 minutes later his X-Wing was destroyed, which was very, very tragic. But I think that was definitely a memorable enough inclusion that I definitely wanted to include that for sure. This was probably the finest hour of this ship seeing it single-handedly take on all of those cannons and disable the dreadnought so that the bombers could make their run. So that was very, very epic, and I'm glad that I was able to recreate it here. And this is part of the instructions. It's just a removable little feature there, and if you do have this on and you remove the fire elements, you can still stand this up on the engines and it won't interfere with that. Obviously the fire would, so it's just something to keep in mind. And I like this build. It's just a simple set of there's a cylinder here and some crystalline elements that just kind of give it a nice flame engaged type of look. I think it really adds to the kind of overall speed look that this thing has. It looks incredibly fast and sleek, and I think that's something that just kind of adds to that. So yeah, this can be left on if you have the stand engaged and everything, so you can display it with this, and that's no problem at all. So there you go. Alright, and I wanted to give you some quick direct comparisons here. So the T-70 is a little bit smaller, it sits a little bit lower down, it's about 4 studs shorter, so that is accurate to the actual in-universe designs, and that is something that I really wanted to reflect, because when I wanted to be able to have these flying side by side, especially since in the sequel trilogy we do get to see this actual Red 5 in episode 9, and it can exist alongside the T-70 X-Wing. So I thought it'd be cool to be able to set up a scene like a hangar bay or something where they sit side by side and that you see the really accurate shaping on both. So that's something that's pretty cool, I think. You can see here the way that I was referring to before, the angle. There's a slight kind of notch in here where the angle changes from the cockpit down through the nose, and that is fairly accurate to the T-65, although I still would like to lower this down ever so slightly, but I'm pretty happy with how that looks. And then comparing that to the more sleek nose here on the T-70, and yeah, seeing just the kind of all the paneling detail and everything that was accurately represented on here, carried through that idea on here with the single gray panel on this side, the gray that's been knocked off on this side right here. I don't know why these panels are so tricky on an X-Wing to keep in good shape, but they always seem to get knocked off. In the instructions, I actually do call for a single 2x4 wedge plate here, just like on this side there's a single piece, and that angle matches a little bit more nicely. I forgot to actually call that out. I didn't have one of those, and I did attempt to order one, but I got the wrong color of orange in the mail, so whoops, but that's okay. So you guys can, if you don't happen to have one of these, you can make this same substitution. I don't think it looks too terrible. I do prefer when it has that nice sleek kind of, the way that the black continues through here at roughly the same angle. I think it just looks a little bit nicer than doing it this way. So that's up to you guys, but that is a more rare piece, and I can understand if you wouldn't want to spend the extra, whatever it is, 20 cents or 40 cents or whatever it is to get that specific part, but I think it looks nice. So yeah, and then yeah, the cockpits in here, let me do a little kind of direct comparison for you. So same kind of idea where we have, sorry, let me show you this one first. So Luke has his little control stick in there. It's kind of hard to see. Let me do this. Let me just open up the sides of both of these. That's better. And then I'll show you guys with Poe and Luke sitting in there respectively. So yeah, Poe's little setup in there with the tucked away kind of lower down control panels, and then Luke with the control panels to the side there, and then in front of him he has the little 2 screens. So very similar in terms of what you actually get. There's still a control stick, there's still control panels, there's still monitors, but it's just a slightly more condensed space in the Poe Dameron one, which I think feels pretty accurate to the real thing. We do actually get quite a few shots like this in The Force Awakens, where we can just see kind of into the cockpit from the side there, and it is a very, very condensed space. So I think this does represent it pretty darn well. I have actually also placed the cockpit piece from the new X-Wing, the 2021 Luke's Red 5 X-Wing, which for some reason came with a light gray detailed cockpit piece there, which for the life of me, I don't know why they keep changing those colors. This one is really accurate with the sand blue, but this one looks really good for Poe Dameron's one, so I guess it's good that they did that, because now I can put it on here. But yeah, this piece, because it only has appeared in a single set, is a little bit more expensive, so if you wish, you can substitute that for the one that came in both of the T-70 sets that we got so far, or actually the 3 versions of the T-70, where it has a silver design with some kind of riveting. I don't think it looks as good. I think this looks nicer. I think it looks more elegant and more accurate to this particular X-Wing, but of course, again, that is up to you guys. Those pieces do run a little bit pricey, but you know, it just depends how much the aesthetics mean to you. And for me, I thought this was a good substitution. So yeah. So yeah, there we go. Those are kind of major differences. Let me just swing it around the back to show you guys those. So you can see here the slightly chunkier back section of the T-65, where it has more of a hexagonal shape, and then this has a much more rounder and smaller compact back section here, and we still have a similar level of detail. So you know, there are those kind of compared and slightly different kind of piece here used on the back of the cannons as well. I wanted to scale down these little sections back here a little bit because they looked a little bit smaller in the actual models that I could see in comparison to the gun barrel. So yeah, just little substitutions like that for accuracy's sake, made kind of all throughout, you know, the design. And let me just show you putting this back on the stand. Super easy. We just placed it in here where the these 2 cheese slopes here just notch into this little section right here, and then that just goes right on. There's a couple of studs that engage underneath, and there you go. Sit it down just like with the T-65. Oops, I went and knocked off the booster. But yeah, just with the T-65, it's the same kind of arrangement. Like I said, just has a slightly different configuration. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this booster back on here. Go in. There you go. And then yeah, you can just also engage the wings while it's on the stand, and it looks really nice on display. So there you go. There is your X-Wing. So thank you to all of you guys who have purchased the instructions for the T-65, and I know a lot of you guys have been messaging me asking where the instructions are for the T-70, and I really appreciate that. The support you guys have given me with these ultimate playset scale models has been really wonderful to see, and I'm glad the response has been so positive. And of course, all those purchases that you guys are doing helps to support the channel, helps me to you know, be able to put more time and source more resources, and you know, in the form of plastic bricks and equipment that I need and stuff to keep the channel going. So that's really great, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, I'd love to see modifications and things. I know a lot of you guys have sent me different squadrons, you know, takes on the T-65 here. I've seen a lot of Blue Squadron ones and things, so really excited to see what you guys come up with for the stock version here of the T-70. I know obviously we see 3 or 4 different takes on it in the movies, so it'll be cool to see if you guys can do any modifications on that for, you know, the various other versions that we've seen of this ship. So I look forward to seeing that for sure. A lot of people have also inquired about different color schemes being made official by myself and offered up, you know, as additional sets. That is something that I'm considering doing in future, just kind of reskinning them, if you will. And I think that's something that's cool, but I always enjoy creatively just putting my time into coming up with an entirely new design. I definitely do also want to do a T-85 at some point, which is the one that we saw in Star Wars Resistance, the New Republic T-85. It's blue and it has a whole different kind of look to it, so that'd be an interesting new challenge. And yeah, just kind of putting those calories, if you will, into new creative endeavors that don't involve just kind of languishing within the same few models and just reskinning them over and over. So I know that that's something people are interested in, but I know that you guys can do it, and I include the digital files for all of these models for that exact reason, so that you guys do have the option to modify these for yourself. So yeah, I'm excited to see some of the results of that experimentation. So there you go, guys. That's going to wrap up the video for today. Thank you so much for watching, and if you did go ahead and purchase one of these, I really appreciate it. And I'm going to get to work on the next design for you guys, and I'll see you on the next one. So thanks for watching, and may the force be with you.